What wire should you choose for your project? That's an important question because which ones you choose will have an impact on how easy it is to construct and how well it will wear. I'm Diane Card-Barron, and in this episode we're going to talk about the shapes, gauges, and hardness of wire you'll need to consider as you move forward with your project. Now that you have a better idea of what metals are used in wire jewelry, the next step is to take a look at wire's other properties and attributes. Most significant are the shape, gauge, and temper of the wire. Secondary, but also important, are the ductility and the malleability. Let's start with shape. There are three basic shapes commonly used in wire jewelry: round, square, and half round. Round wire is the most commonly available shape and can be used for just about everything from earrings to chains to pendants to bracelets. It's the preferred wire for weaving, for ear wires, and for threading through beads with very small holes. Round wire is the most commonly manufactured shape, so you should have no trouble finding any of the metals mentioned in the last episode in round wire. Square wire is particularly useful for any design where you want to create the look of a flat, sheet-like surface. You'll see it used frequently in rings, earrings, chains, pendants, bracelets, and brooches. You can readily substitute it in place of rounds in any of your designs. Square wire has the added advantage that it can be twisted in a pin vise to add visual interest and texture to your design. Square wire has some quirks that make it a little bit challenging to work with, and these are significant enough that I'm actually going to dedicate an entire episode to them. Have a look in the video library for the introduction to square wire. Square wire can be readily found in precious metal. It takes a little bit more hunting to find square copper and brass, but they are available. It's rare to find the more exotic metals such as niobium and titanium in square wire. Half round wire can be distinguished by its flat shiny surface on one side and its curved surface on the other. There are two types of half round wire, high dome and low dome. That's a reference for how much height the curved side has. Half round is used primarily for binding. Binding is a process for joining multiple wires together without soldering, and it's one of the techniques you'll need to master if you want to move on to more advanced wire working projects. Finding half round wire in precious metal will be no problem. Copper and brass are also available, but it's rare to find it in other metals. When you purchase wire and follow tutorials, you'll notice a reference to the gauge of the wire. The gauge is a measurement of the wire's diameter or thickness. You'll remember from episode 3 there was a quick shot of a wire gauge tool to help you determine the diameter of your wire. Depending on the manufacturer you buy from, the gauge will follow one of two standards. The standard wire gauge, or SWG, is the British standard, which until 1986 was measured in increments of thous or mils, which is approximately 1/1000th of an inch. Nowadays, it's primarily calculated in metric. The American wire gauge, or BNS gauge, follows a similar increment and was developed by Brown and Sharp in the mid-19th century. The general rule of thumb for figuring out gauges is that the higher the number, the thinner the wire. So, for example, 16 gauge is approximately 1.2 millimeters thick, and 24 gauge wire is approximately 0.5 millimeters thick. Now, you may notice when you're buying wire that depending on the supplier, they will sell their sterling silver wire in even number gauges and their gold-filled wire in odd number gauges. Don't ask, I have no idea why. So what do you do if you've made a piece of sterling silver and you want to make it again in gold-filled wire? Or what if you want to make a bimetal piece? Well, the general rule of thumb that I use is that if you've made something in 20 gauge sterling silver, the equivalent in gold-filled is going to be 21 gauge. You have to pay attention to which standard is being used because even though the differences are small, they're significant enough that they can throw off your entire design. The explanation of how the differences are calculated is a story for somebody more geeky than me, but I've included a table comparing SWG, AWG, and their metric equivalents on my website, The Tao of Wire. You'll find it under the video library if you click on the link for this episode. The diameter of your wire is going to have a huge impact on your design. If you're designing jewelry for women, you can use thinner gauges, but for men, you should choose thicker wire. The gauges of wire commonly used for wire jewelry range from 28 gauge, 0.32 millimeters, to 16 gauge, 1.2 millimeters. 28 gauge wire is used primarily for textile-based wire work, things like wire weaving, knitting, and crochet. This gauge is very flexible and easy to work, but it can also get kinked and tangled easily. Beads made from precious gems often have holes so small that only 28 gauge will fit through. It doesn't have a lot of strength, so it shouldn't be used without reinforcement for structural elements or for beaded chains. 24 gauge wire can also be used for textile-based wire work and is frequently used for making French hook ear wires. This is a fine wire that will give a very delicate design and can be used for making settlings for small cabochons or short, fine chains. It can be used for adding beads to a design and for beaded chain as long as you pay attention to finishing the ends off properly. 22 and 20 gauge are the two standard gauges used in wire working. You should be able to buy most of the various wire working metals mentioned in episode 4 in one of these two gauges. These gauges can be used for most designs, from earrings to setting cabochons. They are also very commonly used for making jump rings. At this gauge, the wire will have enough strength to stand up to the kind of wear and tear that would crush and deform thinner gauges, so it's useful for chains, findings, and for joining elements to each other. 18 gauge and 16 gauge are the sizes to go for if you want a more substantial look for your design. They make good frame wires for building things like cuff bracelets. Because of their thickness, they're a bit more difficult to work with. Your hands will get more of a workout when you're bending this wire. 16 gauge is the upper limit of what many flush cutters are rated for, so be careful when you're cutting this gauge of wire, otherwise you risk damaging your cutters. If you're not sure, cut this wire with a saw rather than with cutters. Now, if you're new to wire work, then you may not have heard the terms temper, ductility, and malleability before, so let's start with some definitions. Temper does not mean your wire is having a big hissy fit. It actually refers to the hardness of the wire and how easy it is to bend. Ductility and malleability are used interchangeably, but there are some slight differences. To put it simply, ductility refers to how well the wire can be stretched without breaking, like when it's being drawn through a draw plate. Malleability refers to how well it can be shaped by hammering and compression, like when it's being put through a rolling mill. The temper of the wire can be changed by a process called annealing. In annealing, the metal is heated to a specific temperature range. The temperature depends on which metal you're using, and then it's allowed to slowly cool down again. If you can, visualize the metal as being made up of large crystals all joined together. Working the metal breaks those crystals down into smaller crystals and compresses them so that they rub against each other and become very stiff. Trying to work them any more would cause them to break apart. It's a process called work hardening. Adding heat to the metal causes the little crystals to melt a bit. They don't become completely liquid, but as the metal cools, the crystals recombine and grow large again. And at that point, the metal is soft and easy to work. Wire is sold in one of 4 tempers: hard, half hard, soft, and dead soft. Now, normally when I teach this in a live class, I have little samples that I can pass around to all my students so that they can actually feel the difference between hard wire and soft wire. The best way to show you this is to twist up some square wire with a pin vise. When you twist soft or dead soft wire, you'll notice the twists are very even and regular all the way along the length. When you twist half hard or hard wire, you'll notice that one end of the wire will twist more tightly than the other. Any action you take on the metal is going to work harden it slightly. Soft wire, because it has built-in flexibility, gives you a little bit more time to work before it gets stiff, whereas hardness wire, which is already stiff, has less playroom. As I mentioned in the previous episode, the alloy of the metal is going to have an impact on the temper of the wire. For example, 10 karat gold dead soft wire is still going to be much harder to work than hard sterling silver. Different tempers of wire are used in different ways. Hard wire is used in designs where strength and stability are key considerations. Once it's been shaped, hard wire is fairly resistant to damage caused by accidents. It's used primarily for chains and bracelets. It's not a good choice for bezel settings or rings. These types of jewelry need wire that is going to stay a specific shape or size, and hard wire is far too springy. For the same reason, you'll only want to use hard wire for jump rings when you don't have to consider the aspect ratio. For example, when joining elements in a necklace or adding dangles to earrings. Working hard wire in 18 gauge and thicker is going to require a significant amount of muscle, so if your design needs that diameter, you'll want to consider using half hard wire instead. Half-hard wire is the most commonly available temper from most manufacturers. If the package doesn't indicate the temper, it's likely half-hard. Half-hard is slightly more workable than hard wire, but still gives good strength. If hard wire is too difficult to find, or you're finding it tough on your hands, half wire can be easily substituted in most projects. Soft is the temper you're going to want to choose if you're making twisted wire or if you want to make rings or sculpted designs. It has minimal spring, so can be easily shaped around stones and cabochons for bezel setting. It's also good for making jump rings where a specific aspect ratio has to be maintained. You'll need to be careful when working with soft wire because it can be easily marked by the pliers. This wire will get noticeably harder as you work with it and will become more springy and inflexible. If you're making jump rings for soldered chains, you'll want to start with dead soft wire. Applying heat to harder tempers will cause the rings to gap. Starting with dead soft wire will help keep the rings closed and will allow the solder to flow properly. Dead soft wire is used in designs where the wire is worked a lot in the construction process. It lends itself to being used in things like weaving, Viking knitting, and crochet. This wire needs to be handled carefully because it tends to kink and mark easily. Like soft wire, it will get noticeably harder as you work. By mixing and matching the shape, gauge, and temper of the wire you choose, you can come up with an infinite number of jewelry designs. We'll be exploring some of these properties in the projects that are coming up later in the course, but the best way to learn about them is actually just to play. Mix and match and see how far you can push them. Once you understand them, you'll be able to better decide which wire is appropriate for what you have in mind. You'll have moved one step away from relying on tutorials and one step closer to being able to design pieces that reflect your own unique style. Thanks for joining me today. Remember to leave me some comments in the section below because I always love to hear from you. Till next time. If you'd like to develop an eye for detail, follow me on board on Pinterest. It's called The Tao of Wire, An Eye for Details. Don't forget to share this video with your friends. And if you'd like to know when new videos are available, please subscribe. You can do that through my website at thetaoofwire.com. And you can also look at my Facebook page, Vimeo channel, or YouTube channel. Computer and cut. Computer and cut.